In the grand tapestry of societal upheavals and political revolutions, where the thundering roar of the masses often reverberates through the corridors of power, one might assume that the sheer force of collective will is enough to bend the arc of history toward justice.
Statement and a big guess about British politics. I could be totally wrong, but here's my guess, okay? My guess is going to be that people in general have an anxiety, okay? People express that anxiety in a vague manner towards a vague thing, like immigration. People end up getting elected for the anxiety that was expressed about the vague thing to fix the vague thing. But when it comes time to actually write policy, you have no idea what the f you're supposed to legislate on because you don't know what the people actually want or what they complained about. I feel like, as a non-British person, I feel like this was a lot of what happened with Brexit. They, for whatever reason, Brexit came up to a referendum. People voted yes and people were happy, but nobody had any idea, well, what the f does this actually even mean? What does it mean for us to actually Brexit? Like, what's immigration actually going to look like? What's our trading policy actually going to look like? What's Ireland actually going to look like? Like, nobody actually had any idea what the f looked like. They actually managed to do something because they did a referendum thing, but nobody had any idea. And I feel like the same thing happens a lot, even in the United States when it comes to policy. People complain about a thing, and then they have like a general angst or anxiety towards a thing, and then people get elected, but it's like, well, what the f are they going to do? And then obviously at the end, people feel upset that the politicians aren't expressing the will of the people, but the people have no like direction or aim or will towards any particular policy at all. That's what it feels like is happening. Yeah. Brit here, 100%, and then wasted years of political capital rather than addressing other issues. Yeah, that's the issue. You're wasting political capital and you're wasting emotion. People have a strong emotion towards something and nothing happens. In the United States, this happened with Black Lives Matter. What did we need? Abolish the police? What? What do you mean? That's not going to happen. Defund the police? What? You want more training, more body cams, and less money? I don't know what we're going to do with that, right? Or even go back to even further. Occupy Wall Street. What did we want? Corporations aren't people? What the f does that even mean? Are we getting rid of their tax designation? What do you mean they aren't people? I don't know what the f you want us to do with that, right? And then people are mad. It's like, oh, Congress doesn't do anything. They didn't regulate or anything. Regulate how? What do you even want? You guys don't even know what you're protesting for. Yeah, but this is a huge issue. It's so much energy, and people like Constantine are directly implicated evil actors here because these are the people, ideally, I think in an ideal world, pundits are your connectors between the politicians and the people. They should be giving you policy positions to advocate for, or to protest for, or to vote on. They should be translating maybe difficult to understand, maybe jargon, maybe politic-speak or whatever from the politicians to the people. But they don't. They play their own evil, dirty role in this of being vague. Like a pundit today is indistinguishable from a man on the street. You notice that, right? When I debate these people and I talk to them, you just sound like a guy from Twitter. That's it. You don't sound any more educated. You don't sound like you have a better grasp on any of this. You sound like a guy from Twitter. That's it. You believe all the same conspiracies. You have the same depth of knowledge. You have no understanding. You're just a guy from Twitter.
Yet, as Destiny, a modern-day philosopher king of digital discourse, observes with surgical precision, movements like Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, and Brexit often flounder in their attempts to achieve substantive legislative change. The failure, Destiny suggests, lies not in the righteousness of their causes, but in the nebulousness of their demands, the vagueness of their grievances, and the inadequacy of their intellectual leadership. At the heart of Destiny's critique is the idea that these movements, though born of genuine anxiety and righteous indignation, suffer from a fatal flaw, a profound lack of clarity. The energy and passion that fuel these movements are undeniable, yet they often coalesce around amorphous concepts, corporate greed, systemic racism, sovereignty, without articulating concrete, actionable demands. The result is a cacophony of voices clamoring for change, but with no consensus on what that change should actually look like when translated into policy. It is, as Destiny might metaphorically describe, a battle cry without a battle plan, a revolution without a manifesto. In the case of Brexit, for example, Destiny astutely observes that while the referendum gave voice to a widespread desire for change, it provided no clear direction on what that change should entail. The British public, stirred by a vague discontent with immigration and economic insecurity, voted to leave the European Union without a clear understanding of what that departure would mean in practice. The politicians who championed Brexit, sensing an opportunity to capitalize on this discontent, offered little in the way of concrete policy proposals, instead appealing to broad, populist sentiments that lacked specificity. When it came time to actually legislate Brexit, the nation found itself in a quagmire of indecision and confusion, with no clear path forward. Similarly, Destiny critiques movements like Occupy Wall Street for their failure to translate broad critiques of economic inequality into specific legislative demands. The rallying cry of "corporations aren't people" resonated with a population fed up with corporate influence in politics, yet it offered no clear guidance on how to address this issue within the existing legal and political framework. Should the movement have focused on campaign finance reform, corporate taxation, regulatory oversight? Without clear answers to these questions, the movement's momentum dissipated, leaving behind little in the way of concrete achievements. Black Lives Matter, another movement born of deep-seated anger and frustration, also fell prey to this same lack of clarity. While the movement succeeded in bringing issues of police brutality and racial injustice to the forefront of national consciousness, its demands often seemed contradictory or impractical. Calls to abolish the police or defund the police were met with confusion and resistance, even among those sympathetic to the movement's goals. The lack of a unified, coherent vision for reform made it difficult to translate the movement's energy into legislative action, and the result was a series of piecemeal reforms that fell far short of the transformative change many had hoped for. Destiny, in his critique, does not merely blame the movements themselves for these failures. He also directs his ire at the pundits and intellectual leaders who, in his view, have failed to provide the clarity and direction these movements so desperately need. Rather than serving as the bridge between the passions of the people and the mechanisms of government, these pundits often play a role more akin to that of a rabble-rouser, amplifying the emotions of the masses without offering the intellectual rigor needed to channel those emotions into effective action. In Destiny's view, these pundits are no better than a guy from Twitter, spouting the same half-baked ideas and conspiracies with no deeper understanding of the issues at hand. The result, Destiny argues, is a vicious cycle in which movements rise and fall without ever achieving their full potential. The energy and passion that drive these movements are wasted on vague demands and impractical goals, while the political capital they generate is squandered on leaders who lack the vision or expertise to translate that capital into meaningful change. The people, in turn, grow disillusioned with the political process, believing that their voices have been ignored or silenced, when in fact the real problem is that those voices were never effectively articulated in the first place. Destiny's critique is not merely an indictment of these movements, but a call to arms for those who would seek to lead them. He challenges the intellectuals and pundits who claim to speak for the people to do better, to provide the clarity, direction, and expertise that are so desperately needed in times of political upheaval. He calls on these leaders to rise above the noise and confusion, to offer concrete solutions rather than vague platitudes, and to help translate the righteous anger of the masses into effective policy that can bring about real change. In the final analysis, Destiny's dissection of the failures of movements like Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, and Brexit is a masterclass in political analysis. He exposes the weaknesses and contradictions that often undermine even the most well-intentioned movements, while also offering a path forward for those who would seek to avoid these pitfalls in the future. Through his critique, Destiny reminds us that while passion and energy are essential to any movement, they are not enough on their own. Without clarity, direction, and intellectual rigor, even the most powerful movements will ultimately fall short of their goals. In the grand arena of political struggle, Destiny stands as a voice of reason and pragmatism, urging us to move beyond the rhetoric of revolution and to focus instead on the hard work of governance. He challenges us to think critically about the issues we care about, to articulate our demands with precision and clarity, and to hold our leaders accountable for translating those demands into effective policy. In doing so, he offers a vision of political engagement that is not only passionate but also practical, a vision that recognizes the complexities of the world we live in and the challenges we face in trying to change it.